Easter Sundays have been surprisingly important throughout history, with many important events taking place on the Sundays where we as humanity have observed Easter since its inception. If you're Christian, Easter is the day where Jesus conquered death and promised humanity a place in an eternal kingdom after this life. Easter has also been the day where we waged wars, found new islands, and created an anthropomorphic bunnies so companies could sell more cracked sugar to children and force parents to feel like they have to get their kids even more shit during a holiday. So today on Historical Quarrels, we'll explore the history of Easter and some important events that happened to coincide with this holiday. So sit down, get your eggs out, and start coloring them for this historical quarrel. Welcome back to Historical Quarrels. I am your friendly neighborhood quarrel daddy, Tyler here. Thank you for listening today, and I hope each one of you had an enjoyable Easter this past Sunday. As this episode drops on the Monday after Easter, I know I'm a little late to the game, but whatever, it's close enough. So for those of you who observed Lent, I hope you were enjoying whatever vice it was that you gave up today, and now you get to, enjoy it again today, unless it was murdering or, hurting people. So let's maybe keep abstaining from that if that applies to you. So I won't be bashing on religion today at all. That's my goal. I might make some jokes that are a tad more on the sacrilegious side, but know that I'm not making fun of your religion. I'm just, I'm just trying to keep it light and fun here. If you are here for me to bash on religion, I'm sorry. I don't want to do that at all. So my plan is to go over Easter's history, explain it, and talk about some cool facts. My plan for today is first to go over Easter very, very briefly, then go into a timeline of Easters and important Easter events, and then just end the show. I'm recording this the day before the holiday, and so I'm trying not to work tomorrow and just enjoying my time with my family. So enough dilly-dallying. Let's go ahead and get into it. You are listening to Historical Quarrels. Easter, also called Pascha or Pashka or Resurrection Sunday, is a Christian festival and cultural holiday commemorating the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. Described in the New Testament as having occurred on the third day of his burial following his crucifixion by the Romans at Calvary, circa 30 AD or 31 AD. It is the culmination of the Passion of Jesus Christ, preceded by Lent, a 40-day period of fasting, prayer, and penance. Easter observing Christians commonly refer to the week before Easter as Holy Week, which in Western Christianity begins on Palm Sunday and includes Spy Wednesday, on which the betrayal of Jesus is mourned, and it contains the days of Easter Triduum, including Maundy Thursday, commemorating the Maundy and the Last Supper, and as well as Good Friday, commemorating the crucifixion and death of Jesus. In Eastern Christianity, the same days and events are commemorated with the names of days, all starting with Holy or Holy and Great, and Easter itself might be called Great and Holy Pascha. Easter Sunday, Pascha or Sunday of Pascha. In Western Christianity, Eastertide or the Easter season begins on Easter Sunday and lasts 7 weeks, ending with the coming of the 50th day, Pentecost Sunday. In Eastern Christianity, the Paschal season ends with Pentecost as well, but the leave-taking of the great feast of Pascha is on the 39th day, the day before the feast of the Ascension. That's where Jesus ascended back up into the heavens after he spent like 40 days with his apostles after he was resurrected. Easter and its related holidays are movable feasts, not falling on a fixed date. Its date is computed based on a lunisolar calendar. So solar year plus moon phase, similar to the Hebrew calendar. The First Council of Nicaea in 325 established only 2 rules, namely independence from the Hebrew calendar and worldwide uniformity. They didn't want worldwide uniformity because they're like, only cool people can do this, and we don't want like everyone else to like know exactly what day we're celebrating it, and fuck everyone else. No details for the computation were specified. These were worked out in practice. a process that took centuries and generated a number of controversies. It has come to be, since then, it's come to be the first Sunday after the ecclesiastical full moon that occurs on or soonest after the 21st of March, even if calculated on the basis of the Gregorian calendar. The date of that full moon sometimes differs from that of the astronomical first full moon after the March equinox. The English term is derived from the Saxon spring festival of Eostre. Easter is linked to the Jewish Passover by its name, by its origin as well, and the resurrection that took place during the week of Passover. So, a lot of the shit happened during Passover. So in a way, we still kind of celebrate Passover, but instead of celebrating Moses and the Jews escaping, we just celebrate Jesus' resurrection, if you're Christian. And by much of its symbolism, as well as by its position in the calendar. So in most European languages, both the Christian Easter and Jewish Passover are called by the same name. And in the older English versions of the Bible as well, the term Easter was used to translate Passover. Easter traditions vary across the Christian world and include sunrise services or late night vigils, exclamations, and exchanges of paschal greetings, usually by gently tugging, by like two male members of the same church will tug each other's balls as a greeting. You will typically flower the cross, the wearing of Easter bonnets by women, clipping the church, and the decoration and the communal breaking of Easter eggs, a symbol of the empty tomb. The Easter lily, a symbol of the resurrection in Western Christianity, traditionally decorates the chancel area of churches on this day and for the rest of Eastertide. Additional customs that have become associated with Easter and are observed by both Christians and some non-Christians include Easter parades, communal dancing, the Easter bunny, and egg hunting, which is, what I grew up doing was just a bunch of Easter bunny and egg hunting. And it was always like a big deal, man, in my family. I don't know why. I was honestly super confused by it. I was like, why am I getting like candy and shit when this is supposed to be like celebrating Jesus is, coming back from the dead? It kind of feels like it. I don't know why I thought this as a kid. I must have been a weird kid. I was like, it feels kind of weird to be getting candy and like, thinking about a bunny laying some eggs when, I should be more, back at the time I was like super religious. I was like, I should be more concerned about like, my bro Jesus coming back from the dead and like, saying he's going to come back. That feels more important, but whatever. I still had fun on Easter and hunting eggs. And now I get to watch my kids hunt eggs, and it's a lot of fun. But Easter foods vary vastly by region and culture. The modern English term Easter cognates with modern Dutch Ooster and German Ostern, developed from an Old English word that usually appears in the form of Istron or Istron or Istran, but also as Yastru or Yastro or Astre or Eostre. Eostre. Bede provides the only documentary source for the etymology of the word. In his 8th century, The Reckoning of Time, he wrote that that is exactly how it's pronounced. No idea. It's Old English for the month of Eostre, translated in Bede's time as the Paschal month. Was an English month corresponding to April, which he says was once called after a goddess of theirs named Eostre, in whose honor feasts were celebrated in that month. So, it still kind of has some pagan origins in it too. In Latin and Greek, the Christian celebration was and still is called Pascha, a word derived from Aramaic, Pascha, cognate to the Hebrew Pesach. The word originally denoted the Jewish festival known in English as Passover, once again, but just, the Jewish exodus from slavery in Egypt. As early in the 50s of the first century, Paul the Apostle, writing from Ephesus to the Christians in Corinth, applied the term to Christ, and it is unlikely that the Ephesian and Corinthian Christians were the first to hear Exodus 12 interpreted as speaking about the death of Jesus, not just about the Jewish Passover ritual. In most languages, the feast is known by names derived from the Greek and Latin Pascha. Pascha is also a name by which Jesus himself is remembered in the Orthodox Church. especially in connection with his resurrection and with the season of its celebration. Others call the holiday Resurrection Sunday or Resurrection Day, after the Greek anastasis, Resurrection Day. Easter is linked to Passover and the Exodus from Egypt in the Old Testament through the Last Supper, sufferings, and crucifixion of Jesus that preceded the resurrection. According to the 3 synoptic Gospels, Jesus gave the Passover meal a new meaning. As in the upper room during the Last Supper, he prepared himself and his disciples for his death. He identified the bread and the cup of wine as his body, soon to be sacrificed, and its blood, soon to be shed. The Apostle Paul states in the first epistle to the Corinthians, "Get rid of the old yeast, that you may be a new batch without yeast, as you really are. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed." This refers to the requirement in Jewish law that Jews eliminate all chametz, or leavening, from their homes in advance of Passover, and to the allegory of Jesus as the paschal lamb. So he's, and that's how they're, corresponding the two. Easter and the holidays that are related to it are movable feasts, and that they do not fall on the fixed date. Once again, it has led to a lot of confusion with Western Christianity using the Gregorian calendar. Easter always falls on a Sunday between March 22nd and April 25th, within about 7 days after the astronomical full moon. And the following day, Easter Monday, is a legal holiday in many countries with predominantly Christian traditions. Eastern Orthodox Christians base paschal date calculations on the Julian calendar because of the 13-day difference between the calendars between 1900 and 2999. 21 March corresponds. The 21st March corresponds during the 21st century to the 3rd April in Gregorian calendar. Since the Julian calendar is no longer used as the civil calendar of the countries where Eastern Christian traditions predominate, Easter varies between the 4th of April and the 8th of May in the Gregorian calendar. Because the Julian full moon is always several days after the astronomical full moon, the Eastern Easter is also often later relative to the visible lunar phase than Western Easter. So, it might be like a day or two or like just a couple days later. Among the Oriental Orthodox, some churches have changed from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar, and the date of Easter, as for other fixed and movable feasts, is the same as the Western Church, just to make it easier. Thank God. Oh man, could you imagine just having friends in, one was like an Eastern Christian, one was a Western Christian, and they're like trying to figure out what days you needed to schedule off to go to their Easter celebrations, respectively? That would be a nightmare. Just like, so the Julian full moon's going to be on this time. Well, actually, no, it's probably going to be in a couple weeks based off of this, and this. You just have to run like a shit ton of math calculations in your head, and you have to go consult with a fucking astrophysicist to make sure. That would be the worst and one of the most annoying things on earth to try and do. It's already a nightmare to try and fucking schedule shit with family and to, get everyone together. Having to do it like this based off the full moon is so annoying, but whatever. It was originally feasible for the entire Christian church to receive the date of Easter each year through an annual announcement by the Pope, because, there used to not be that many Christians. By the early 3rd century, however, communications in the Roman Empire deteriorated to the point that the church put great value in a system that would allow the clergy to determine the date for themselves, independently yet consistently. Additionally, the church wished to eliminate dependencies of the Hebrew calendar because they're sick and tired of having to deal with their Jewish neighbors, cousins, if you will. They're tired of it. They're like, listen, you guys killed our savior. And that's where a lot of Jewish hate mongering kind of started and fed and grew from. It was because of the fucking moons, man. It's frustrating to deal with. No, there's also just a bunch of conspiracies, and really it does tie back to this Christian viewpoint of, the Jews killed Christ, and therefore they're lesser than, or they're that wicked, and so which is completely not true at all. I mean, plenty of Christians killed plenty of innocent people too. It does not make you right just because you believe in maybe the right religion, and who knows if you are right. Anyways, in the reckoning of time in 725, Bede uses a computus as a general term for any sort of calculation, although it refers to Easter cycles of Theophilus as a paschal computus. By the end of the 8th century, computus came to refer specifically to the calculation of time, which is kind of cool. It's almost a term for computers, to computate something. The calculations produce different results depending on whether the Julian calendar or the Gregorian calendar is used. For this reason, the Catholic Church and Protestant churches, which follow the Gregorian calendar, celebrate Easter on a different date from that of the Eastern Orthodox churches. I know I'm kind of repeating the same point, but I just like to. It's just so interesting to me. It's really funny to me as well. So anyways, the controversy over the correct date for Easter began in early Christianity as early as the 2nd century AD. Discussion and disagreement over the best method of computing the date of Easter Sunday had been ongoing ever since and remains unresolved. Different Christian denominations continue to celebrate Easter on different dates, with Eastern and Western Christian churches being a very notable example. And so with me saying, hey, this episode's coming up a day after Easter Sunday. Well, clearly, I'm from a predominantly Western Christian society. That way you guys can know that. Let's go ahead and go into our timeline for Easter now. So in 31 AD, Jesus Christ is crucified and dies. Then is subsequently rezzed the following Sunday after his death, becoming the first human ever with a 0:1 KD ratio, since he was a pacifist and didn't want to kill anyone. And like many people with a 0:1 KD ratio, he told his friends that one day he'll come back and kill like 1 billion bad boys who are like so bad, taking his KD ratio from 0:1 to 1 billion to 1. But like my friends who keep saying that they can be good at the game and just choose not to, they have yet to prove it. Just saying, yet to prove anything. But if what Jesus' friends and followers say is true, this guy's pretty magical and can probably do it. So, one would need to have strong faith in him, though, to keep thinking it's going to happen. So there's that. So when the second coming does happen, that KD ratio, it's going to be way fixed. Not going to have that 0 to 1 anymore. Okay, and then in the 1st century AD, the apostles, notably Paul, state that Christ's resurrection is our Passover, and they perform the Eucharist for the first time, or sacrament. And according to Christian theology, this is the first time Easter is celebrated, but a lot of the information given by the Catholic Church is disputed because many of the original texts or letters written by the apostles did not survive. So there is a debate on when it is first officially observed. This is also considered the first sacrament after Jesus' death and resurrection. And then in the 2nd century AD, this is when, according to historians, the first known celebrations of like Easter take place. What I mean by that is the name Pascha is used in reference to this type of celebration. We find this evidence in the letter to the apostles, circa 150 AD. This was originally written in Greek. However, it was more likely that converts from Judaism were the first ones to celebrate Easter in this way. Not Greek converts to Christianity, but more than likely Jewish converts. And then in 325 AD, in a ecumenical council, the First Council of Nicaea, they established 2 rules for Easter. Number 1, there was independence from Jewish calendar. Because, fuck that calendar. And worldwide uniformity. Everyone had to follow it. However, it did not provide any explicit rules to determine that date, writing only, all our brethren in the East who formerly followed the custom of the Jews and are henceforth to celebrate the said most sacred feast of Easter at the same time with the Romans and yourselves, the Church of Alexandria, and all those who have observed Easter from the beginning. Shortly before the Nicene Council in 314, the Provincial Council of Arles and Gaul had maintained that the Lord's Pasch should be observed on the same day throughout the world, and that each year the Bishop of Rome should send out letters setting the date of Easter. And to be fair, that council, I think, had the right idea. I have no idea why figuring out when Easter is going to be every year needs to be a fucking chore. It's like Christmas. I mean, could you fucking imagine the logistical nightmare companies would have if we had to figure out the exact day Jesus came out the womb? And every year we had to sync up calendars. We had to make sure, like, Gregorian or Julian calendars, we had, make sure one was being used right. That would be a headache and a half. It's much easier just to pick a day and celebrate it, like December 25th. Fucking duh. And I know you could say, well, it's just the first Sunday after a full moon, but man, I do not have time to be looking at whether or not a moon is waxing itself for sun daddy, okay? I've got kids, a wife, a job, bills, and hobbies to handle. I don't have time to be looking at the moon and being like, oh yeah, that's it's the Pasch full moon. Yeah, that's because it's like March, and so like that means like Easter's in a couple weeks. Just pick an effing day in April and celebrate it then. Makes way more sense to me. I mean, some people might call that blasphemy, but I don't give a fuck. Okay. And then 664 AD, the Roman missionaries coming to Britain in the time of Pope Gregory I found the British Christians adhering to a different system of Easter computation from that used in the Mediterranean basin. And they're like, well, I'm more righteous than these fucks. And they're like, so you guys need to follow me. This system, on the evidence of Bede, fixed Easter to the Sunday falling in the 7-day period from the 14th to the 20th of its lunar month, according to an 84-year cycle. The limits of Nisan 14, Nisan 20 are corroborated by Columbanus. The method used by the Roman Church was Nisan 15, Nisan 21, the 84-year cycle, the lunar limits, and an equinox of March 25th. This also receives report from McCarthy's analysis of Padua Biblioteca Antoniana. Any of these features alone could have led to occasional discrepancies from the date of Easter as computed by the Alexandrian method. This 84-year cycle, called the Laticus, gave way to the Alexandrian computus in stages. The Alexandrian computus may have been adopted in parts of the south of Ireland in the first half of the 7th century. Among the Northern English, the use of the Alexandrian computus over the Britanno-Irish cycle was decided at the Synod of Whitby in 664. The Alexandrian computus was finally adopted by the Irish colonies in northern Britain in the early 8th century. Okay, now jumping way, way ahead, all the way up to 1582 AD, after the Gregorian reform of the calendar by promulgation in 1582, the Catholic Church continued to follow the same method for computing the date of Easter, but the resulting date differed from what that computed using the Julian calendar, due to the difference of time regarding when the vernal equinox was deemed to occur and when the relevant full moon fell. Do you not see how big of a problem this is? And the Nicene Council, the worst part is they could have fucking solved this. They could have just been like, you know what? Second Sunday in April. That's when we're doing this, okay? The date really does not matter. We're not going to be doing any fucking witchcraft. Fuck it. Second Sunday in April, we just celebrate it. Okay, we celebrate Easter. We go, yay, Jesus is rise. That's really cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for doing that for us. That's real cool. Can't wait to see you again in like a couple thousand years. And then that would have been great, but no. No, they're like, listen, man, this has to be an exact science. I have to make sure the moons. Okay, it's all about the fucking moons. Like it's like if Charlie from It's Always Sunny was running the church, and that is what this feels like happened for deciding the date of Easter. The Protestant churches of Christian West all eventually adopted the Gregorian calendar at various later stages. The Eastern Orthodox Church and the majority of the Christian East continued the older practice aligned to the Julian calendar. Several attempts were sought to achieve a common method for computing the date of Easter, but none have seemed to work out. Well, kind of. In 1997, we will get like a full adoption eventually, but we're not there. We're not there yet. We still have hundreds of more years of infighting for the church. In 1722 AD, the first recorded European contact with Easter Island took place on the 5th of April, or Easter Sunday, when Dutch navigator Jacob Roggeveen visited for a week and estimated there were 2,000 to 3,000 inhabitants on the island. His party reported remarkable tall stone figures, a good 30 feet in height. The island had rich soil and a good climate, and all the country was under cultivation. Fossil pollen analysis shows that the main trees on the island had gone 72 years earlier in 1650. The islanders were fascinated by the Dutch and sailed out to meet them, unarmed. The Dutch officer, Carl Friedrich Berens, wrote of the encounter, "During the morning, the captain brought out an Easter Islander on board with his craft. I'm only doing this voice because Carl is just, I know he's Dutch, but Carl just sounds so German. This hapless creature seemed to be very glad to behold us, and he showed the greatest wonder at the build of our ship. He took special notice of the tautness of our spars, the stoutness of our rigging and running gear, the sails, the guns. which he felt all over with minute attention, and with everything else that he saw. When the image of his own features was displayed before him in a mirror, he started suddenly back, and then looked toward the back of the glass, apparently in the expectation of discovering the cause of the apparition. After we had sufficiently beguiled ourselves with him and with us, we started him off again in his canoe towards the shore. When the Dutch got to shore, sorry, like again, I know he's Dutch, so he's not German. It doesn't sound anything like that, but just have fun with me, okay? He was an Austrian that escaped the empire, okay? He escaped the Holy Roman Empire and became a Dutchman. And as when the Dutch got to the shore, the islanders pressed around them, tried to touch the Dutch, the clothes, and even the guns. During this, a shot rang out from an unknown person, leading to a firefight that killed 10 or 12 islanders. To their distress, they learned that among them was the young man who they had shown their ship, to which Barons stated that the crew was much grieved. Oh, that is real sad. It's the young dude that they like met and like was super nice and chilled with them, and they killed him. They fucking killed him, probably because they tried to grab the guy's guns. But they didn't know. They didn't fucking know. They were like, what the hell is this shit? Could you imagine? They'd be like aliens coming by and like letting us like feel up and touch their technology. I'd be curious too. Like if they had something fucking holstered to their waist. Could you imagine they had a fucking lightsaber? Of course we'd grab that. And then I'd probably get my head chopped off. But like, duh. So come on. The natives soon returned, not for revenge, but seeking to trade food for the bodies of their fallen. The Dutch left shortly thereafter. Such a peaceful people. Good on them. They were able to like. That'd be fucking hard for me. I found, again, if aliens killed someone I cared about, I probably want to go kill all the aliens. So good on those people. The next foreign visitors arrived on the 15th of November in 1770. Two Spanish ships, San Lorenzo and Santa Rosalia, sent by the Viceroy of Peru, Manuel de Amat, and commanded by Felipe González de Aedo. They spent 5 days on the island, performing a very thorough survey of its coast, and named it Isla de San Carlos, taking possession on behalf of King Charles III of Spain, and ceremoniously erected 3 wooden crosses on top of 3 small hills in Poik. 4 years later, in mid-March of 1774, British explorer James Cook visited Easter Island. Cook himself was too sick to walk far, but a small group explored the island. They reported the statues as being neglected, with some having fallen down. No sign of the 3 crosses, and his botanist described it as a, quote, poor land. He had a Tahitian interpreter who could partially understand the language that the islanders spoke. Other than in counting, though, the language was unintelligible. Cook later estimated that there were about 700 people on the island. He saw only 3 or 4 canoes, all unseaworthy. Parts of the island were cultivated with banana, sugarcane, and sweet potatoes, while other parts looked like they had once been cultivated but had fallen into disuse. George Forster reported in his account that he saw no trees over 10 feet tall on the island. Cook also noted that, unlike before, the islanders carried weapons when approaching foreign visitors. Probably because, people got fucking killed last time. So spears 6 or 8 feet long, which are pointed at one end with pieces of black flint. So not the most effective weapons. And then on April 10th, 1786, the French explorer Jean-François de Galou-La-Perouse visited and made a detailed map of Easter Island. He described the island as 1/10 cultivated and estimated that the population of the island was around 2,000. As published maps increasingly included the island, by the 19th century it had become a common resupply stop for sealing and whaling ships, with over 50 known visits. Over time, these stops, starting with an 1805 visit from an American sailing ship, increasingly included pressing the islanders into their ships. Crews as forced laborers, so slaves. And again, as forced laborers, ultimately just outright, they were slave raids. They just became slave raids. And speaking of slaves, 1877, in America, on Easter Monday in 1876, upwards of 10,000 children, with a day off from school, marched toward the newly completed cast iron dome of the U.S. Capitol. Touting baskets abounding in a rainbow of colorfully dyed eggs, they had come to carry on a peculiar holiday tradition that had arisen in the nation's capital during the 1800s in which young revelers rolled hard-boiled eggs down the hills of Washington, D.C. It was the Great Egg Roll. This was to see which ones traveled the farthest without breaking. And nowhere in the District of Columbia was the egg rolling any finer than on Capitol Hill. All day long, screaming children rolled their eggs. And I got this from history.com, by the way. So if people are questioning this, I got this from history.com. I'm just reading this from their little page here. So screaming children rolled their eggs and themselves down the grassy embankment on the west side of the Capitol grounds. They said the noise was so great that in the House and Senate chambers, it drowned all other sounds. The kids were that fucking loud. The business of the country ground to a halt as congressmen exited the building to witness the commotion. And, even worse to them, the ensuing destruction. The throng of frolicking children wore the grass completely bare and left the terrain more scrambled than scrambled eggs. Already strapped for cash to properly maintain the Capitol grounds, and with the country's big Centennial Bash less than 3 months away, Congress was so outraged at the damage caused by the egg rollers that it essentially told the kids to get off its lawn, thus being the first instance of an old man being like, "Get off my lawn, children, I shit you." This is real too. "Get off my lawn, you damn kids." Proving as hard-boiled as the eggs that tumbled down Capitol Hill, Congress passed the Turf Protection Law to prevent any portion of the Capitol grounds and terraces from being used as playgrounds or otherwise. So far as may be necessary to protect the public property, turf and grass from destruction and injury. Less than 2 weeks after Easter, President Ulysses S. Grant signed the measure into law on April 29, 1876. That guy was probably like, yeah, I'm also kind of fucking done with this too. Rain washed out Easter festivities in 1877, but when the egg rollers tried to return to Capitol Hill the following year, the police turned them away. A bunch of buzzkills. The District of Columbia's disappointed children, however, found a warm welcome on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, where President Rutherford B. Hayes instructed his guards to allow the popular pastime continue on the hillocks of the White House's backyard. Okay. And then in 1916, we have the Easter Rising, also known as the Easter Rebellion, was an armed insurrection in Ireland during Easter week in April of 1916. The rising was launched by Irish Republicans against British rule in Ireland with the aim of establishing an independent Irish Republic. While the United Kingdom was fighting the First World War, it was the most significant uprising in Ireland since the rebellion of 1798 and the first armed conflict of the Irish Revolutionary period. 16 of the rising's leaders were executed starting in May of 1916. The nature of the executions and subsequent political developments ultimately contributed to an increase in popular support for Irish independence. They wouldn't be getting independence until wasn't it 100 years later in 2016 they finally got fucking independence from Britain? So organized by a 7-man military council of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, the rising began on Easter Monday of the 24th of April, 1916 and lasted for 6 days. Members of the Irish Volunteers, led by schoolmaster and Irish language activist Patrick Pearse, joined by the smaller Irish citizen army of James Connolly and 200 women of Cumanamban, seized strategically important buildings in Dublin and proclaimed the Irish Republic. The British Army brought in thousands of reinforcements as well as artillery and a gunboat, which seems a bit overkill, to be honest. Britain was probably just like, listen, we're not losing fucking Ireland, okay? We've lost everything else. We lost America. Fucking Henry VI lost us France. We've lost everything. We're keeping Ireland, damn it. So there's street fighting on the routes into the city center, where the rebels slowed the British advance and inflicted many casualties. Elsewhere in Dublin, the fighting mainly consisted of sniping and long-range gun battles. The main rebel positions were gradually surrounded and bombarded with artillery. God damn, dude. God damn. There were isolated actions in other parts of Ireland. Volunteer leader Eoin MacNeill had issued a countermand in a bid to halt the rising, which greatly reduced the extent of the rebel actions. Man, Queen Elizabeth II was a bitch. I guess she wasn't queen yet during this time, but her family, they fucking sucked for Ireland. With much greater numbers and heavier weapons, the British army suppressed the rising. Parts agreed to an unconditional surrender on Saturday, 29th of April, although sporadic fighting continued briefly. After the surrender, the country remained under martial law. About 3,500 people were taken prisoner by the British, and 1,800 of them were sent to internment camps or in prisons in Britain. So, go Britain, doing the internment camp thing for Irish people. Most of the leaders of the rising were executed following court-martial. The rising brought physical force republicanism back to the forefront of Irish politics, which for nearly 50 years had been dominated by constitutional nationalism. Opposition to the British reaction to the rising contributed to changes in public opinion and the move toward independence, as shown in the December 1918 election in Ireland, which was won by Sinn Féin Party. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Sorry. Which converted the first Dáil and declared independence. Of the 485 people killed, 260 were civilians. 143 were British military and police personnel. 82 were Irish rebels, including 16 rebels executed for their roles in the rising. More than 2,600 people were wounded. Many of the civilians were killed or wounded by British artillery fire, or were mistaken for rebels. Others were caught in the crossfire during the firefights between the British and the rebels. The shelling and resulting fires left parts of central Dublin in ruins. Yeah, again, the British Empire just really could not stand to lose any more land. They had lost a lot of land by that point and were kind of fucking done. They were still fucking over India pretty good, but they were done losing shit. And then in 1945, on Easter Sunday, the U.S. began its battle in Okinawa, and this will last for 82 days. Despite the Japanese not traditionally celebrating Easter, the U.S. would decide to share its time-honored tradition a bit late by dropping 2 big eggs on the towns of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. However, due to military oversight, the eggs contained a large amount of unstable uranium and plutonium. They were combined into a core, and since there were explosives in the egg when it was dropped, when it hit the ground, the oxygen caused the traditional explosives to go off, which then brought the core to a supercritical mass, which caused a violent explosion, a nuclear explosion. And they did this twice. And when asked about why the Easter eggs had a nuclear core in them, President Truman is cited as saying, it was just an Easter April Fool's prank. Instead of an egg, it was just an atomic bomb, and the Japanese need to chill out. It was just a prank. You bunch of crybabies. So the Japanese did in fact chill out and surrendered, and the world was at peace once again. But not for long, because the Russians decided they wanted to be able to pull off as epic as a prank as the US was able to, and made it an atomic bomb of their own. And the US hated how Russia handled its finances and was all like, bro, what if they prank us so hard that they force us to spend money like how they spend money? So that's how the Easter/April Fool's Cold Prank War began. Listen, I know it's a bit fucked up to attribute what is arguably one of the worst atrocities the U.S. has committed. Well, I don't know if it's the worst, but it's up there. It's top 3 for sure. Anyways, it just being an April Fool's or Easter prank, but yeah, fuck it. It's been long enough since it happened that most of the people who experienced the horrors of that are most definitely dead. And people who were, caught in an explosion were dead. We have been dead for a long time. I'm not hurting anyone. Anyways, 1997, the World Council of Churches proposed a reform of the method of determining the date of Easter at a summit of Aleppo, Syria. Easter would be defined as the first Sunday following the first astronomical full moon following the astronomical vernal equinox, as determined from the meridian of Jerusalem, which again, it's so over the top complicated. It's like it was an Always Sunny bit. It definitely feels like it could be. Anyways, the reform would have been implemented starting in 2001, since in that year the eastern and western dates of Easter would coincide. This proposal, however, was never implemented. And we're still stuck trying to figure out which moon is right. And that brings us to the end of today's historical quarrel. All right, everyone, you made it to the end of today's episode. I know it was a brief one. It was a short one, but I hope it was a fun one. Hope you learned something new. I know I certainly did. Still Still can't believe that we can't just pick a fucking date for Easter. I mean, seriously. Okay, listen, all we do is March 21st typically falls around like the third week of March, right? And if the new moon's going to be happening in like 2 weeks, okay, we just go 1, 2. And look at that. Lo and behold, that's the first Sunday in April, usually, for most of the time. So we could just do the first Sunday in April, solve a bunch of issues, and, not deal with this bullshit anymore of, trying to figure out moon phases and whatnot. The moon waxing itself for sun daddy. It's all good and dandy and all, but I hate dealing with it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening to it on the podcast. Thanks for everyone that has been stopping by on the YouTube channel. I'm not going to be... I'll be honest. This is gonna be a short episode, so I'm not gonna be talking a whole bunch more. I hope you guys have had a good holiday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday or whatever day you're listening to. I just hope it's a good day for you. I love you all. Have a good one. Goodbye.